Welcome, Magnus here, A7C. It's been announced, people have talked about it, but really, is it a camera worth getting? Here's why I think Sony missed the mark. If you're new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing. I talk about cameras and tricks that you could do with your camera, so definitely if you want to see that type of content and hear my weird opinion on things when it comes to these cameras, hit subscribe. Hit that notification bell to stay up to date, and hopefully you'll like what I got to say. Now, Sony is an interesting camera creator in my opinion. Sony has been revolutionary in the mirrorless market when it comes to their cameras. Sony has really been ahead of the game when it comes to mirrorless cameras because competition like Nikon and Canon really didn't enter the mirrorless game in the full frame sense until 2018 when they released their R and Z cameras, right? But Sony itself is right now, at least lately, hasn't really been an innovator when it comes to what is really next level until the A7S III was announced. And the A7S III is really Sony looking at video shooters with respect and saying, look, these are features that video shooters wanted, we're giving them that. But then they also did that with the ZV-1. They said, this is a perfect camera for vloggers, very tiny, built-in lens. Here you go, image stabilization. We think vloggers are important. So it's kind of confusing. And on one end, Sony is like, okay, finally focusing on the video line of their mirrorless cameras because we've had the A7R4 for a while now. And the A9 is up to Mark II. So that's on the photography end. So the fact that we've got now A7S III, ZV-1, and now the A7C, it seems like they're saying, okay, we're going to design that flip screen that you guys always wanted. We're putting that wireless digital microphone on the top. It's everything that you guys can dream of as vloggers. Go vloggers. But then there's the question, like, vloggers, how many vloggers are out there? And is vlogging even something that's special anymore? It depends on what type of audience you are on YouTube. There are some YouTubers that are vloggers that talk about the ridiculous or do ridiculous things on screen and then people just can't stop watching them, usually the younger crowd. But from what I've seen, at least from older creators or at least creators that want a specific niche that they want to focus on, it hasn't been so much about vlogging as it is presenting material that's useful for you guys. Heck, this video that I'm doing right now, I hope you guys enjoy my opinion. I'm not using a flip screen for it. I'm not even using image stabilization right now. I'm just using the camera that has no autofocus, and I still get the job done. So YouTubers themselves are a versatile group, and they're going to buy the camera that they need that'll best serve them. But then in comes the A7C. The A7C is, let's face it, it's like the younger brother or sister to the A7 III. It uses the same sensor, full frame sensor, of course, and pretty much even the same menu system, which we were hoping that Sony would have completely given up on that archaic menu system, but they're still using it for the A7C. So in that sense, it's kind of like, but they threw in a flip screen. And they're saying, hey, perfect camera for vlogging, great autofocus, and a flip screen, and image stabilization, which hasn't been the best for Sony, but at least it has it. It's better to have it than not to have any image stabilization. And I'm sure you could take great pictures. And yeah, they made it with the purpose of go as light as possible. So how did they think that they could get it as compact and as light as possible? Simply by chopping the viewfinder right off of the A7 III, because that's what it looks like. It looks like an A7 III without the viewfinder. It's almost practically the same size as an A7 III. If you look at it side by side, of course, without the viewfinder. The viewfinder is this tiny little hole. And then you'd think, well, that's a crappy viewfinder. Why do you have that? Well, the thought is get as many people to adopt Sony from an entry-level perspective. And if you're shooting video and like a vlogger usually uses the flip screen in front of them and barely uses the viewfinder. And a lot of younger kids today or those that pretty much are used to taking pictures on their phone rather than a traditional camera that they pull up to their eye, they're going to be fine with the screen on the back and just taking that picture, right? So that's the thought process. So when you have that and that ability to take pictures like that, it's good enough for those that are early adopters. And that's what you want to attract. Bloggers who want full frame sensors, want to step up their video game, but have a tiny package because they want to travel with it all the time. And I have two problems with that, because I think the intention is really good from Sony, like, make it as small and light as possible. And for those that, want to adopt that type of system, fine. But two problems. When you are using a full frame sensor, you're going to need giant lenses that have a wide aperture so that you can take advantage of the background blur. Because if you get a small lens, like a kit lens, sure, it'll be tiny, but then those creators are not really going to see the advantage of a full frame sensor. So then they're going to think that they overspent until they realize, oh, I need a better lens. And then they get the better lens, and then everything looks great, but then they no longer have a light camera. And then they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. I wanted a small camera. So then they almost feel cheated. And that's what I mean on my second point, because Sony's charging like $1,800 for an entry-level full-frame camera that's tiny. I don't even know if they consider it entry-level, but that is not the right price point. You can get incredible camera systems that have smaller sensors, like the GH5, for example, or the XT4, and actually get great-looking footage and shallow depth of field with smaller lenses. All right, it's very expensive to get a shallow depth of field with lenses like that, unless you use like a speed booster and then you adapt giant lenses anyway. But you could still go full frame for a lot less. Now, let's be truthful here. When you're someone who's not really spending a lot of money, thousands of dollars that these cameras cost, you just want to go next level, and you want background blur, and you want to make videos for YouTube, it's a lot easier to buy something like a Canon RP. Canon RP, 26 megapixel sensor, full frame, does 1080p, and it has a flip screen. It's a little bigger, of course, it's a little bigger, but it's not that big. It's still pretty tiny. And you get great looking footage, great autofocus at $800 less. I think I would gravitate towards a little bit of a heavier camera, but one that I could afford to start off with, than something so expensive like Sony's A7C. Sure, it's smaller, but then it ends up to be the same size anyway, and it costs so much more. For what, 4K? If I'm a beginner, I probably am not concerned about 4K as much as I'm concerned about good-looking shallow depth of field and good-looking footage. But that's just a guess. I'll let you know that when I was looking to up my game in video quality, I was not too concerned about higher resolution 4K. Although 4K cameras were out when I was trying to get that better quality footage, all I cared about is good looking footage and shallow depth of field and good low light performance. That's what really mattered to me. And then I got this Canon 6D, and then that was fine, and then upgraded from there to like the NX1 for 4K. But is that really what the audience wants? I don't know. I would be interested to see anyone be interested in that specific camera rather than something a lot less cheaper, or pay a couple of $100 more. You can get the full A7 III. But then that in itself is the question. The only people who are seemingly going to want this camera are those that are going to stick to a small lens and have a small camera in itself, but have a full frame body. Particularly those, and that like Sony, obviously. It's almost geared to just them, and that doesn't make much sense to me. The biggest thing to me, too, is a missed opportunity with the price, because if they had it at an entry-level price, I've heard $1,500 thrown around, but to me, that's still too much. I would, because you have someone like Canon with the RP for $1,000. That's why I think $1,500 is still too much. So I would do like $1,200, because you know what, is a newer camera than the RP, and $1,200 is a good price to be like, hey, you get these features like 4K 30. You get great looking log on the camera so that you can tweak your colors in post, and you get great pictures and everything. $1,200, and I would almost consider one. $1,800, and then you're too close to the next camera up. And that's why I don't think it's worth it or makes much sense. But I guess Sony's throwing everything in the kitchen sink. But that's just my opinion. I don't have the camera. What do you guys think? Would you think that the Sony A7C is a smart decision, or at least priced right? I don't, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And as always, thank you to the community. And you definitely made my day when you subscribed today. This is Magnus. I'm out. See you guys later.